He craved the identity of a statesman and worked diligently to deserve the distinction. Few senators understood the large strategic premises of national defense and the most intricate details of defense policy as well as John Tower understood them. Few knew the caliber of the men and women, officer and enlisted, who fight for us and the quality of the weapons we give them to fight with, as well as John Tower did. Few senators had as extensive contacts with the leading international statesmen as John Tower did. He traveled abroad frequently and knew personally every major foreign leader of his time. He was a superb selection for the office of Secretary of Defense. Although Bush took his time in naming a defense secretary, the announcement wasn't made until 6 weeks after the election. Tower's name always figured prominently as the probable frontrunner for the job. When it became official on December 16, 1988, no one was surprised. John Tower stood contentedly within the reach of the summit of his ambitions. I couldn't have been happier for him, or for myself for that matter. It's no small thing for a junior member of the Senate Armed Services Committee to have the Secretary of Defense as a close friend and mentor. I could look forward to a rapid increase in stature in national security debates if Washington believed I had the trust and the ear of the Defense Secretary. But there was more than self-interest behind my enthusiasm for John's nomination. John Tower was my friend, and I was delighted in his success and the happiness it gave him. I owed him a lot, and I take my debts seriously, particularly debts I incurred to friends as loyal as John Tower was to me. But I had no idea that the time was at hand when I would begin to repay him for his many kindnesses to me. His confirmation was expected to be a simple formality, and like everyone else in town, I assumed his confirmation hearings would be perfunctory, notable only for the lack of aggressive questioning from committee members who usually spare their former colleagues such discourtesy. In hindsight, I might have sensed trouble coming, given my familiarity with John's personal life and the excessively disagreeable nature of his ex-wife, Lilla. I should have been all the more alert when several weeks before his nomination was announced, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a story with the headline, "Tower, Too Hot for Bush to Handle?" that reported the details of a divorce settlement dispute during which Lilla's lawyers accused Tower of marital misconduct and demanded depositions from 3 women they alleged were the objects of his misconduct. A few days later, NBC ran a rehash of the allegations on the evening news. Other stories calculating the odds of a Tower nomination had also included vague references to reports of womanizing and excessive drinking. But since senators are not exactly unaccustomed to hearing such rumors about their colleagues or about themselves for that matter, and since the rumors didn't seem to have unduly concerned George Bush or the people vetting John's nomination, I didn't expect him to be too much of a problem. Embarrassing? Surely. But disqualifying? Not unless Washington was unexpectedly seized by one of its periodic fits of Puritanism. And that, I felt sure, was not a likely scenario. There were too many hearty drinkers around the place who might not always have been the most exemplary of devoted spouses to begrudge John his vices, even if they were as exceptional as some wilder imaginations thought they might be, which, as is usually the case in scandal-loving Washington, they were not. I had seen John Tower drink. I had seen him inebriated on occasion, but never incapacitated, never falling down drunk. He worked hard and liked to relax at the end of the day with a glass or 2 or even 3 of Johnnie Walker Black. I was familiar enough with the behavior of alcoholics to recognize the symptoms in others. John Tower wasn't an alcoholic. Wild behavior, or just notable inappropriate conduct, was something I saw Tower enjoy only vicariously, sober or not. By the time of his nomination for Secretary of Defense, he no longer indulged his fondness even for Johnnie Walker. He had given it up years before and restricted his alcohol consumption to a few glasses of wine with dinner. His divorce from Lilla, as messy and bitter as it was, had also relieved him of the burden of great unhappiness. She had fought with his daughters, mistreated his staff and friends, embarrassed him constantly, and generally made his life miserable. Freed from the marriage, he was a visibly happier man, more easygoing and amiable. He had, as he was eventually and embarrassingly forced to admit, extramarital affairs during his first marriage.